Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the National Alopecia Areata Foundation's webinar, When Stress Takes Over, Understanding How the Nervous System Drives the Emotional Impact of Alopecia Areata. Joining us today is licensed clinical psychologist, Dr. Joanna Rosen, and I'm Lisa Anderson, Senior Director of Research for NAF. Before we start the webinar, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping details. We've disabled chat for this webinar session. Please post questions for Dr. Rosen in the Q&A section. Please keep your questions general for the benefit of all audience members. This webinar is being recorded. All registrants will receive a link to the recording via email sometime tomorrow. And finally, please share your feedback with us. At the conclusion of the webinar, a link to a short survey will pop up in your browser window. Please complete the survey there. We use your input to help plan future webinars. This webinar is part of NAF's You Are Not Alone Education and Empowerment webinar series. We gratefully acknowledge the support provided for this webinar series by our partners Lilly, Pfizer, and Sun Pharma. Before we start the webinar, I'd like to tell you a bit about NAF and our mission. The National Alopecia Areata Foundation is the leading advocacy organization for alopecia areata. NAF's mission is to drive research to find a cure and accessible treatments for alopecia areata, support those impacted, and educate the public about the disease. NAF's vision is an empowered community with a choice to embrace or live free of alopecia areata. To learn more about NAF support resources and research and advocacy activities, or to join us as an advocate or a supporter, please visit our website at naf.org. And now on to today's webinar, When Stress Takes Over, Understanding How the Nervous System Drives the Emotional Impact of Alopecia Areata. We're very pleased to have Dr. Joanna Rosen here with us today. Dr. Rosen is a licensed clinical psychologist with over 25 years of experience specializing in trauma-informed and trauma-responsive care. She has a longstanding focus on the prevention of chronic mental health conditions, both in academic research and in clinical and community-facing roles. In her private practice, Dr. Rosen focuses on the evidence-based treatment of traumatic stress, including medical trauma, sudden loss, complicated grief, and both chronic and single-incident trauma. As a parent of a child with alopecia areata, she brings both clinical expertise and personal insight to the emotional and nervous system impacts of the disease that she'll be talking about today. Dr. Rosen, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I will turn it over to you. So you can start sharing, and I will go off camera. Perfect.
Excellent. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for being here tonight. There might be a wide variety of audiences here tonight, so whether or not you are somebody who is living with alopecia areata, whether you're supporting someone, or whether you just are trying to understand it better, this talk tonight is for you. It's not just about what's happening on our bodies, or even what's happening between the ears. It's about what's happening underneath everything else. Because alopecia areata doesn't just change how we look, it actually changes how we feel, how we show up for ourselves, and how we move through the world. So the big question for that is why? Well, because when something attacks us from the inside without consent, beyond control, it doesn't just affect our appearance, it affects something much deeper, and that something is our nervous system. Our nervous system is constantly busy. It's constantly sensing, interpreting, and responding to changes, not only that are happening in the world outside, but also those that are happening internally. And that's what tonight is all about. How alopecia areata affects the nervous system, and how understanding that nervous system better can help you better take care of yourself or someone that you care about, not just physically, but also emotionally. So tonight we're going to be exploring a number of different things together. What everything has in common is that a lot of it is unseen. It's about how our brain and body responds to stress, even when we don't notice it, what stress looks like in everyday moments, and how alopecia areata can trigger a deeper stress response. Following up with some practical ways to help the body come back to steadiness and how your calm, whether for yourself or for someone else, actually can do this thing called co-regulation, which is settle the nervous system of somebody else who is in distress. So the overall goal is pretty simple. I'm hoping that you walk away from tonight with a better understanding of how your body is trying to protect you, and also some practical tools that you can use to help restore more calm and more choice and more control in your life. So before we dive deeper into this, a quick note on why I've been invited here tonight. I'm a psychologist, as was mentioned, who specializes in trauma. And I've spent over 25 years helping people navigate through some of the most challenging times that life can actually throw their way. But my most important role is as a mom. And this right here is my youngest son. These are going to be some snapshots that I'm going to show you of my son's journey that started and creeped into our lives in 2016, ramped up in 2019, before taking a dramatic turn in 2021, and ever since has been a passenger that we never invited into our car, but nonetheless has been there ever since. And this is my son today, actually 2024. So tonight you're going to get both worlds. You're going to get a two-world perspective, me both as a psychologist, a trauma psychologist in particular who understands and specializes in the nervous system. And again, my most important job, which is of being a parent, not only having to navigate through an unknown disorder process, watching someone I love go through something I just can't make go away, all the while trying to steady not only my own nervous system, but also all of the other nervous systems in our house, which is our family. So let's start with this. Hair loss is not just what we see in the mirror. It's about what our brain and our body are doing in response to it. So even when you don't realize it, your nervous system is actually working really hard behind the scenes, trying to make sense of what's going on, trying to make sense of loss, the stress that you're experiencing, the shifts that you see in yourselves and in others. And that's really important. So the goal when we talk about the nervous system, it's not just to feel better. Actually, what we're talking about is interrupting the cycle of stress that gets activated with alopecia areata. It's about learning to recognize your internal patterns and respond with calm and patience instead of pressure. This actually isn't optional. It's protective and it's really healing. And it's one thing that you can do to give you a real shot about calming down what already is an inherently stressed out system. So how does the nervous system know how to respond? It's constantly scanning the world around you through these little things that we call our five senses. But as it does that, it's asking questions. It's asking basic questions as it notices and is picking up cues. Essentially, am I safe or not? The body answers the question even before we have an awareness to it. It reacts to facial expressions. It reacts to tones, glances. It even picks up other energy that's in the room. And it picks up nonverbals, such as silence. So for just a moment, I know we can't share things with each other. I just want you to tune into your five senses. Notice what you're sensing. Notice what you're hearing right now. Notice if there's a smell. If there's not a smell in the room, you could smell your hair. You could smell your clothes. Notice what you see. Maybe take your hand and just feel something. Note whether or not it's smooth, whether or not it's hard. And if you have anything nearby, you can taste your water or just imagine tasting something. So then what? After your nervous system picks up on cues based on what it's detecting in the world around us, it then is able to sort of very rapidly assess, is there a threat? And as soon as it picks up on anything that it sees as a threat, it makes a lightning fast decision, whether to fight, whether to go into flight mode, or whether to freeze. If there is no threat, that's what's called regulated, meaning sort of you just go about your day. Fight and flight are all about mobilizing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that next. And freeze is really that shutdown response. And each of these responses is your body's way. It's making its best decision that it can to protect. So here's some other ways to think about it. Maybe you can glance through these. I'm not going to be reading them all. But what you'll notice is that each stress response, each time our brain, our system detects a threat, there is a shift in energy. It says internal energy. So in fight, I think we all know what that feels like to be all revved up. That's a surge of energy, and the purpose of that energy is to push back or to defend against an oncoming threat. And listed here on the under fight are all these different ways that you might experience yourself or someone around you when that individual or yourself is in fight mode. With flight, it's the same surge of energy, but the reason why we surge with energy for flight is so that we have what we need to have to escape from danger, as opposed to going after it. And listed again here are all different ways that you might notice our flight response showing up. And then with freeze, energy actually drops, and the reason for dropping is to sort of huddle down for the purpose of protection, to conserve energy. And it could feel like spaciness, numbing, disconnect, all of the different things that you notice written on this slide. Really important to remember is that each of these responses is absolutely normal. It's built into our human system. But the risk is that if they go unrecognized for what they actually are, which is a response to threat, they can start to run the show. And that's a big purpose, excuse me, of tonight, is to learn about this so you can start to notice them. And then by noticing, you can actually shift to get back to balance. All right, excuse me. We're going to bring it to life a little bit here, starting with fight. This is what stress could look like every day. We start with fight. It could be yelling, it could be repeatedly doing things, it could be snapping at somebody, or we could go into flight, which might mean racing out of a building or just checking out. With freeze is one that we often miss because it really could look like someone just zoning out, not paying attention. But again, what's really key here is that these are not personality traits. These are all survival strategies. Okay, it's important to remember not all stress is negative. We have things called positive stress, and this is a fun example. So imagine yourself being surprised with a puppy. Your brain notices this puppy and it sends a signal to the body, and the body responds. This is positive stress. You need that surge of energy to be excited. You get activated, but it's activated for a good thing. It's to fuel energy, to fuel joy. And this is a really important reminder that, again, our nervous system is always working, whether or not it's excited or whether or not it's trying to keep us safe. So this is a different kind of moment, and it causes a different kind of response. So maybe hard for a lot of you to imagine this, but imagine you have a big pile of work. You've got a packed schedule, you've got too many responsibilities. It's been a long day and the pressure keeps building. So your brain notices this and might say, like, I can't do this. And then our body responds, maybe by shutting down, maybe by spacing out, maybe by falling asleep. So from the outside, it might look like laziness. You might see disinterest, but actually, it's possible that what you're also seeing and experiencing is your nervous system hitting pause just to protect itself from overload. And this is what we call the freeze response. Okay, one step deeper when the nervous system detects real threat. So it's probably not hard for some of you to imagine, but imagine you're in the shower, running your hands through your hair, and you notice a number of hair strands coming out. Maybe on a pillow, maybe you notice yourself in the mirror looking differently. For some, it's brand new. It's a sudden, terrifying moment. But for others, it might be something that happened a really long time ago. But what happens is our nervous system remembers danger, remembers threat. That's how it's able to keep us alive. So even when hair grows back, your system still might be holding on to, likely is holding on to, what's called a threat memory. And that still lives in the body, not because you're stuck in the past, because your system has learned to stay on alert so that it can help you survive. And what's really important is this is not just for somebody who is living with alopecia areata. Parents, partners, friends, caregivers, you name it, each of us carry our own stress responses because we also saw this happening to somebody we cared about. We had no idea how to help at the time. Helplessness followed. So each of us actually, whether it's happening to us directly or indirectly, our nervous systems are doing exactly the same thing. They're trying to protect ourselves, trying to protect somebody we really care about. And the reactions, there's nothing wrong with the reactions. It's just part of being human. So I want to pause here for just a moment, and I know that we can't go through this together, but I actually want you to really think and reflect on, how does stress show up in you? How does stress show up in somebody that you care about? So the first one is fight, right? So remember, fight is all about the surge of energy to regain control, to go after what we see as a threat. So just for a moment, if you're a caregiver, what have you seen in your child that might fit into this thing we call the fight response? If you're an adult, whether an adult with alopecia areata or a caregiver or just an adult in general, notice how you see fight showing up in yourself or in somebody else around you who you care about. So then we'll go into the next one, which is flight. This is sneaky because it actually looks like, or it could look like, being really busy, being distracted, somebody's just really distant. So if you think about it that way, how might that response show up in you or in other people? Whether it's your child, whether it's just an adult, whether you're somebody with alopecia areata, what do you notice in the fight response in people around you? I'm sorry, in the flight response for people around you. Followed up by freeze, right? So freeze is the shutdown response. You might notice somebody going really quiet, somebody saying, I don't know, it's okay. And it's really important to notice that although it might look like disinterest, it might look like laziness, it might even look like agreeability. What also might be going on is that the nervous system is shutting down into that same idea of low power mode when we're running out of a charge, and it just shuts down to conserve energy. So the bottom line, we can't always stop stress from showing up, but we can help our nervous system settle back down. And that's really where we're heading next. So here's the shift. I know a lot of that may have come across as heavy. Hopefully it just puts some understanding behind some of the experiences that you might already be noticing. So when we shift to these other tools, we're not just talking about trying to feel good. What we're talking about are ways to restore inner calm in really simple ways. I'm going to briefly just sort of note on each of these. And then what we'll do is I have a few that we can just sort of walk through together and practice together. So again, we're not pretending anything. We're trying to find a way to give our body back what it doesn't have, which is a sort of a way and a path to come back to steadiness when it's all stressed out or distressed or worried. So 5 examples that are here, just simple ways. One is, and we're going to go through this more in detail. One is called grounding. It's grounding with your senses. We did this a little while ago when I said just sort of notice what's around you. And the reason for that is that by paying attention to your 5 senses, again, remember, your 5 senses are what's taking in the world so that it can be brought together so your brain, your nervous system can make a decision. Am I safe? Am I not? And that's what initiates the stress response. So when you know you're in a space where there isn't actually danger and you tend to your 5 senses, it can help your brain and your nervous system anchor in the present. The next one is all about breathing, and it's really all about the exhale. We don't have to teach ourselves how to inhale. It actually happens automatically. But one of the things that happens when we are revved up is that our breath becomes a little more shallow and it gets more rapid. Again, our system is wiring us up to escape, to get out of danger. So when you add in a longer exhale, sort of think about it as maybe a 4-second inhale followed by a 6-second exhale. It's another way to help shift your nervous system out of alert and back into calm. I love the next one. Humming, making a sound such as What you'll notice is that it vibrates your vocal cords, which actually activates a specific nerve we have that's running from our brain stem into our body called the vagus nerve. You may have heard of that before. And that is actually a way to reset from the inside. Movement, even subtle movements, are a way to discharge tension, discharge stress, and reconnect us to rhythm. Think about how we soothe a baby. We rock, right? Because inherently rocking and movement is calming. Most importantly, connection with others, even brief. We are social creatures. We are social beings. Humans need social connection, not online connection, but actual connection with real people. Because as brief as it might be, connection helps remind our body and our systems that we're not alone. All right, let's go back to this one for just a moment. This is an exercise that is often known as, sort of referred to as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is easy to do anywhere. If you're sitting in an office, if you're feeling stressed about anything, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can interchange any of the senses. I just put them like this. Typically, 1 is about taste, because oftentimes we actually don't have 5 different ways of things around us when we're stressed out. We usually can taste what's in our mouth though. So just real quickly, and really importantly, you want to label it. So it's not, for example, with sight, you're not just going like this. You're actually naming. You're going from what you see, which is actually coming into a lobe in the back of our brain, and labeling, pulling it up front. So I see a pen. I see a table. I see a coffee mug. Like that. You can do it inside of your head. It doesn't have to be out loud. But I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and just go through that process, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just notice what happens with your system after you do that. Another technique. This is actually a technique used in there's a biofeedback program called HeartMath. And this is a technique that is taught in that training, and it's called heart-focused breathing. It's used very often in all different kinds of programs and trauma treatments. So what you want to do is it's oftentimes, you can keep your eyes open. It actually might be easier and less distracting if you close your eyes. So I'm going to do that just to show you. First thing to do is just focus your attention on this part of your body. Could be your heart, could be your chest area. Some people like to take a hand and just put it where they feel themselves and feel most grounded. And without changing anything, just breathe normally. Maybe a little bit more slowly, maybe a little more deeply than usual. Just finding natural rhythm. And as you're breathing, you want to imagine visualizing that your breath, when you inhale, imagine that breath going in and right to that heart center in about a 4 count, and then your exhale as a 6 count. Just imagine yourself breathing out and visualize, if you can, the breath leaving your system and then going back in and then leaving again. Again, the idea is a 10-second breath is typically what we're looking for when it comes to regulation. But just do whatever feels natural. And remember, the goal here is not to feel like you have to instantaneously calm down. It's really just to offer a pathway towards regulation. Even just beginning to focus on your breath in this way helps your system begin to pull back so you can try to go back and find that state of calm. And this is a great one. Again, one of the most simple ways to help yourself if you're feeling stressed out or shut down is through movement. It doesn't have to be a workout. You don't have to work up a sweat, and you don't have to get yourself all nauseated like some of these characters are. You could wiggle your fingers. You could sway in your chair. I actually at work sit on a balance ball because it helps me sort of just maintain that rhythm throughout the day. You can stretch your legs, you can roll your shoulders, you really can do anything. Especially if you feel yourself revving up, knowing that your system wants to do something, like just like move, and then get yourself into any kind of rhythm. Put on dance music. You can sing out loud as you dance, whatever feels right, whatever that is, just move. And really importantly, regulation is contagious, right? So is dysregulation, right? We live in a world now where communities are and countries are dysregulated. It's almost like a traumatized globe at this point. And the reason why is we feed off of each other, right? If we're around somebody who's all revved up, who's activated, our nervous system, before we even can make a decision, is picking that up. It's like, wait a second, what's going on here? Everyone is all stressed out. What's the danger? And then it sort of hops to us. And then it hops, and it becomes almost like a contagion. So what's really important to know is the opposite actually is true also. So much in the same way as we can all get stressed out together, if one person in a system can be the starting point for regulation, that nervous system can then send that kind of calm energy to another nervous system. Think about noticing if there's a loud noise, or if you're in a restaurant, people will automatically start to look at each other to gauge whether or not it's safe. And as soon as we see somebody else feeling calm, we can settle also. So all of the strategies that I mentioned before are not just for you, it's also for somebody else. So if you're activated, you want to look for somebody who's calm, not somebody who's activated. If what you want to do is help calm somebody else down, you have to be able to regulate and calm your own nervous system. Now, again, this is when there is not an imminent external danger. When that happens, we go with what our nervous system is doing because the goal is to keep us safe. But if we know that what we're dealing with is a chronic condition that is, it can be erratic, it can be spontaneous, it can be the same all the time, we want to be able to be there for somebody else, and we want other people to be able to be there for us, because at any given point, somebody in your system, in your friend group, in a classroom, whatever it is, if you're a healthcare provider, I'm a healthcare provider. I work with people who are coming to see me because they have experienced their worst day ever. I have to be able to regulate myself if I want to be of any benefit or help to somebody else, because their nervous system needs to pick up from me that it can be okay, that the room, the space that we're in can be safe and can be steady. So we basically become a ripple effect for somebody else. So for those who are walking along somebody else with alopecia areata, support matters the most. Sometimes the most important thing, the most powerful thing that we can do for others is not try to fix something if we know we can't fix it. We can be resourceful, we can read, we can do our research, We can try to find the best providers, the best treatment possible given where we live, given a lot of other variables. But we ourselves can't fix something that's happening inside somebody else. So oftentimes, it's just our presence, it's just being there to co-regulate, to help somebody else feel safe in the moment. It's not easy when you are also being impacted. It's not easy at all, but it's possible. It's possible not to have to have an answer. It's this idea of just like holding space for somebody else. We can contain for somebody else when we know it's happening to somebody else. We can contain space for that person. We can just acknowledge the reality, which is like, I know this is not just about hair. If we see somebody who's feeling shut down, instead of saying, well, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you speaking? We can just mirror. You seem really quiet. Is it okay if I just sit next to you quietly also? Remember that calm presence is a thing. Just saying we're here matters. And really importantly, when somebody else is in a rapid emotional pace, we don't need to follow them, right? We can just know that they're going to be up days, down days. Some days might feel heavier than others. It's just being human. And if all else fails, know that you are the thing, you are the person that is the most important person to help regulate somebody else. And it's really all about steady presence. There's this airplane analogy that is often used in the trauma world, and it has to do with what happens when you get onto an airplane and you hear, if you're traveling with somebody else, if you're traveling with somebody young who needs your assistance, put on your oxygen mask first before putting on somebody else's. Now, I remember as a young mom saying to myself, that is like, why would I ever do that? Of course, I'm going to put the mask on my child first. But the reality is, when it comes to how we can show up best for somebody else who needs us, it's to make sure that we have our own oxygen mask on first. So for caregivers, for people who are in a community, if you're meeting someone or talking to somebody who's experiencing alopecia areata hair loss for the first time, just being a steady presence really is the most important thing possible. There used to be this known, what used to be known, I should say, across the trauma literature is like, it's not what's wrong with you, it's what happened to you. And what we now know is that it's actually more than that. It's not just what happened to you, but when what happened to you, who is there for you? And that really is the essence of what support and nervous system calming is all about. You can be there for yourself, you can be there for somebody else. So that brings us towards the end. We're going to have some Q&A. I'll do my very best to answer any questions that I can. But if after we do this, if you still have any questions or thoughts, you're more than welcome to connect with me. I have two different websites. One is for my clinical work, one is for my consultancy. I know it's a heavy topic. Again, if anything came up, you want more information, just reach out. And again, starting from the beginning, my hope is that you leave tonight having heard all of this, even if there's just one takeaway, that you have a little bit better understanding. You might even have some new language. And really, most importantly, is that you leave knowing that you can be kinder to yourself. And hopefully you leave today with that that urge to be kinder to yourself now moving forward than you came in with. And if that happens, then I will consider it a successful webinar. So we can open it up for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Rosen. That was a wonderful presentation and a great way to end it. If we could all be kinder to ourselves. That would be great for all of us. So a couple of questions about the stress response that you talked about. Someone posted in our Q&A, can someone turning to substance misuse be a flight or a freeze response?
So that it's a great question, actually. I mean, number one is it's really dependent upon what is causing that person to turn to a substance. One of the things that we know, and it's actually a real solid positive, is that somebody who is then using substances actually is trying to feel better, right? Looking for some way to just feel better and not be in distress. And actually, that's half the battle. It's just that the modality of trying to feel better has a lot of downsides. So again, the system is picking something up. If somebody is going after a substance, it depends on whether they're trying to get away from a feeling, whether they're trying, whether the system is like shut down. The only way to shut down is by taking in this substance. And if it's about regulating the nervous system, then it would fall into one of those responses, stress responses. These are not the only three. These are just the main ones that people hear about. So I decided to focus just on those today.
Okay, thank you. So here's another one about stress response. So if the person wrote, if I recognize that I'm in a stress response, so for example, I'm freezing or I'm feeling like withdrawing, should I tell the people around me, like my coworkers, what I'm going through? Does that help, or is it better to keep what I'm feeling to myself?
So it's actually a really interesting question, right? Because a frozen response actually is when we drop. This is like, I don't want to get into like too much about, sort of the brain and the anatomy, physiology. The freeze response is actually when the brain drops to the most primitive level, right? Because what happens is when our system takes in through our senses to find out what's going on outside, what's going on inside, the go-to for every adult, right? Anybody who's old enough, who has enough of a developed brain, is going to first drop down actually to what's called the fight flight response. It's mobilization, right? It's either to get away or to go after. When that is not possible, when the system, before we know it, does not believe that that's possible, it drops down again, and it drops down to that immobilized, frozen response, which is in essence hoping that just by conserving, whatever the danger is will just go away. So again, if you have awareness that you're in the frozen response, chances are you have more access than you think, because you're not at that lowest drop level. So it's really about what else you're picking up. If you have that sort of simultaneous awareness of what's happening inside and around you, if you're in an environment where people care about you, or you believe that those are helpers who can be of help, absolutely connect. Ideally, as soon as you notice, and again, a big part of this is beginning to notice, for example, not when you're furious, but when you're a little mad, not when you're in despair, when you're feeling a little down. And then that gives you the best chance to sort of intervene and seek out other people for support, especially if they're people who can be of support, which is actually really important, that the helpers are actually helpful. So absolutely seek people out if you're comfortable. If you're not there yet, all of these strategies are things you can do sitting anywhere. Nobody's going to know it, right? You can, I mean, I'm talking to you now, right? I'm on this thing. You can't see this, but I'm tapping my toes back and forth, right? You can't see that though, but I'm able to do that. So if I'm feeling anxious or revved up or stressed, I can breathe. Well, I hope I can breathe, but I can actually sit here with you and do breath work to try to help pull myself up enough to be able to engage with the world and to be able to be more active rather than shutting in and down by myself, which is why, again, that response is the hardest for other people to detect because other people might just see, oh, she's just being quiet, or he's just being quiet, or seems really thoughtful or disconnected. So it really has to start with us to pull ourselves up enough to then decide what to do to serve us best.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Here's a question from a mom. How can I manage my emotions as a mother when I feel deep sadness for my son, knowing that it may affect him to see me this way?
Spot on. Number one, it's okay if your son sees you sad, right? That's just an emotion, right? What's important is that depending on the age of our kid, being in distress in front of a child, we have to then know that they're going to see they're going to see us in distress, which is going to activate their nervous system. And then they're going to try to help us, which is the reverse role. So, I mean, listen, I've been there. I was really sad. And I said, I'm feeling really sad. Like, I don't know how I can be of help right now. If I didn't know how I could be of help right now. Because remember, it's verbal and nonverbal. By saying nothing, that doesn't mean that you're not still sending nonverbal signals to your son that there's something really wrong. And what's important to also know is that in terms of how the brain develops, you can't really see it. I have my like pet brain back there. The brain develops from the inside out, bottom up, inside out, back to front. So what that means is children do not have a full regulation online, right? They don't have the same ability to self-regulate. So their system is constantly picking up on non-verbals, especially if you have a younger child, right? They don't have the same words that we have. So they look to us. They'll look to the caregiver to send a signal, am I okay? Being sad being sad in a situation that actually is sad is absolutely being human. If it's at a level of sadness that you can't function or you can't do what you need to do both for yourself and to be there for your son, well, then that's when we seek out support from other people to help us do that. So that's what I would encourage you to do. And listen, it does get to a point, it can get to a point. My son went from having hair to having essentially no hair in a matter of weeks. That was not a slow thing, the Rosen household was not in a totally chill mode then, but we couldn't be because we had no idea what was going on. So give yourself the compassion to know that it's okay. Actually, a slight aside, 30% of the time, we want to be there for our kid 30% of the time is what all the research on parenting and attachment is. 70% of the time, we can kind of like not be on our best everything, so long as we then go back after we realize it and be like, you know what? I was having a moment. I'm back. I'm here. And you can check in and see how your kid's doing with your response and just be open about it. It's such an internal process for so many reasons. Speaking about it at the right age level is connection.
Great, thank you. This is a question, I guess, and a comment. After many years of health challenges, how can one still have energy/coping to manage ongoing bad news and hair loss, or total universalis continues? One loses hope of getting hair back. Many health losses and it never ends. Shutting down and ignoring it seems to keep one going. Because it's like a long term.
Yeah, so remember number one, shutting down is an adaptive response in the moment when there's real threat, there are real things that are going on. It's not a problem until it's a problem, right? So if shutting down and conserving is working, and it really is what your system is having you do to get through, then that's just being human. If shutting down isn't working for you, or you want to try to get out of that response. So remember, our brain, our system likes familiarity. So if shutting down in real moments has been effective, you are more likely to default to shutdown, even if there are those micro moments where an alternative response might actually be possible. Because it's survival. We don't keep doing something differently if it worked the first time. So getting through, okay, it's hard to read between that, right? I hear it's possible that there's other things, that it's not just a shutdown response, and then connection and getting support. There have been incredible strides. Alopecia areata, hair loss, universal, these are medical traumas, right? So why medical trauma? Because something that is happening outside of your control inside your body is a threat. So it's evoking a threat response, and it overwhelms your nervous system's ability to process what's going on the way it can ordinary events. That is actually the actual definition of trauma. I know it's used a whole lot of different ways out in the world, but it really is all about, if something is overwhelming your nervous system's ability to process and act, it fits into that category. It is a trauma. It's not like it fits into that category. They are unbelievably effective, science-driven, evidence-based therapeutic approaches to help with trauma. So I would say do what's working unless it's not. And I imagine you are the best, you're in the best position to determine if it's working or if it's not. And then it just takes a little bit of, a lot of it, I should say, of courage to see if it's even possible to just get a little bit more in a state of calm, a little bit more calm. I hope I answered that question. I'm not sure if I did.
No,
But
it's a hard question.
yeah.
I think we'll do one more question. What impact does stress have in the long term? Do day-to-day grounding practices help prevent long-term implications?
So I'm going to say absolutely. I'm not sure what context you're talking about, but there's something called, and this is a term that's used with biofeedback, is this idea of having our nervous system be in what's called coherence or in what's called incoherence. So the idea of practicing, and it's practice. It's like, I practice meditation. I actually don't practice meditation. It's really difficult for me. But practice, practice, practice is what allows us, when we're in moments, to just reflexively use. So if you can think about it, if you can calm your nervous system down so that it's not on high alert, all of the systems that change, we go through a massive physiological change when we're going from calm to being all wired up to go survive. That happens for safety, but the long term, I mean, there's a lot of literature, a lot of data out there on the impact of what's called toxic stress, toxic workplaces, toxic cultures, living in chronic stress and dangerous environments does impact overall health. Absolutely. So we may not be able to change our situation, but if we can add in elements of calm, and this really is where the trauma industry is actually moving in this way, really looking at the neuroscience, looking at the nervous system as a way to re-regulate. The data is growing in terms of long-term implications. In the moment, staying connected and present absolutely is grounding and will help you engage with the world in a much better way than if you're stuck in a survival response.
Well, I thank you. I think that's a good place for us to end. Lots of great insights there that I think everybody in the audience can take with them and hopefully reduce the stress that they're feeling and help interactions with families. So we appreciate you being here and sharing
Okay.
your personal and professional expertise with this community. So I'm going to share my screen again and we will wrap up this webinar. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rosen, for being here. Again, thanks for your time. I also
You're
want to thank our audience for being here and joining us today. To the audience, please share your feedback on today's webinar. It really helps us plan future presentations. A link to a short survey will pop up in your browser window at the end of the webinar, and your feedback is greatly appreciated. Many of you know the 40th annual NAF conference is almost here. We're looking forward to seeing many of you there. It's not too late to register to join us in Chicago. We are getting together next week. We have a schedule packed with exciting and informative sessions, and the conference is a great opportunity to connect with the alopecia areata community. You can scan the QR code that's on this slide to learn more and register. And the Walk for Alopecia is coming. The third annual Walk for Alopecia will take place on Saturday, September 27th, and it's going to be bigger than ever. We're going to have 2 flagship sites in San Francisco and in Philadelphia, and more than 20 volunteer-led community walks will be happening from coast to coast. Anyone can walk anywhere as a team or as an individual. We hope you'll join us and register today. So you can scan this QR code to get more information, or you can go to naf.org/walk. Join us for our next webinar, JAK inhibitors in dermatology, unpacking the box warning and long-term safety data. The FDA's approval of JAK inhibitors has transformed the treatment landscape for severe alopecia areata. These medications are also used across a range of autoimmune and inflammatory conditions, including several in dermatology. However, all JAK inhibitors carry a serious safety warning, also known as a boxed warning, highlighting the risk of significant side effects. But what does this warning really mean? In this webinar, board-certified dermatologist and clinical researcher Dr. Jennifer Sung will break down the science behind the FDA's decision, explore the data that led to the box warning, and discuss what long-term safety studies now reveal. She'll offer practical guidance on how to apply this evolving evidence when considering treatment options for alopecia areata, and help you weigh the risks, benefits, and context for using JAK inhibitors in dermatology today. This live webinar will take place on Thursday, July 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Registration for this webinar is now open, and you can scan this QR code to register. As you know, there's a lot happening at NAF. How can you keep up? You can use this QR code to subscribe to our email list to get regular updates on alopecia areata news and research, our monthly electronic newsletter, and notices about upcoming webinars and other programs. And don't forget that NAF offers a number of resources and programs to the alopecia areata community, including support groups, our youth mentor and legislative liaison programs, the doctor finder, clinical trial listings, as well as our annual conference. To learn more about NAF and the resources we offer, please visit naf.org or email us at support@naf.org. Well, this concludes today's webinar program. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks again, Dr. Rosen, and we look forward to seeing everyone on the next webinar.
Bye-bye. Be well.
Thank you too.